Welcome back, everybody. You are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage here on YouTube. And I don't get to make videos like this very often because after more than 12 years of sewing machine restoration as a very devoted hobby, I guess you'd say, and over 10 years of having this channel, I've restored quite a lot of sewing machines. Certainly not every sewing machine that ever existed. I don't know that anyone has, but quite a few brands and quite a few models. But this is a machine I have never, ever shown on the channel because I've never had one. I've seen them for sale, I've seen them available, but I have never overhauled one of these sewing machines before. And we're going to be doing that on the channel, and I thought it would be interesting to some of my viewers to have you watch me again take on a machine for the first time. As many of you know, there are certain sewing machines that I have restored and shown on the channel multiple times. Because they are frequently available to me, and they are also some of my favorites. And I'm just curious if any of you can guess as to what machine this is. Now I know I have it. It comes in a case. It has a very tall cover compared to some of the older style cases. It has, it's pretty wide, and it is, it's a machine that some of you will have actually. Some of you will know. Give you a couple of hints here. It's a brand that you have seen me cover a number of times. It's not an esoteric or obscure brand whatsoever. And the machine is it is from, and you probably can tell this from the case and the cover, it is from the 1960s. And it is remarkable in many ways because it is one of the last sewing machines of a great sewing machine brand that was still made with metal components, and by that I mean steel drivetrain components. Now, those of you who know my channel know that one of the last of the great machines that had all metal construction was the Kenmore series from the 1970s, early to mid 70s. They start with model number 158 point, and then there are a series of machines in that group that were all steel, and they had aluminum bodies. But this is not a Kenmore. So I won this at an auction, and I paid, with all the taxes and the fees and this, that, and the other, it had to have been around $75. And I always have to remind my viewers that I don't get sewing machines for free. I think I've got 2 machines donated to me in the past of all the years I've been doing this. Typically, I have to pay for them. I either buy them when they're advertised on classified sites, like many of you go looking on places like Craigslist or Kijiji here in Canada, or Marketplace. And then other times I get them at auctions, and this machine was purchased at an auction. So I'm going to quiz you guys because many of you know vintage sewing machines, and if you don't, you might at least know what company used what pedal. Now remember, this is 1960s, and I'm going to show you the foot pedal. It's gray, but any of you who have watched my channel will probably be able to recognize this. This is the foot speed controller, and if you know the button style controller, you will know the brand even before I'll turn the machine around in just a moment. Now, this is the plug end, right? Notice the plug. So what machine do you think it goes to? You do know, of course, that the Singer had a number of machines in the 1950s, new designs, and they eventually would change their long, they long had the little, I call it the smiley face or the frowny face plug, that three-prong, but they went to this plug style when they launched the 500 Slant-O-Matic series, what we today people lovingly refer to as the Rocketeer. But it was the 500 series, right? The 500, the 503, and the I think it's 504. So, but it's gray, right? It's not beige, it's not brown. So, what do you think? Do you think it goes to a Rocketeer? It might not. So, I'm going to show you a box of attachments that came with it. You never know what you're going to get when you get a vintage machine. Okay, you guys see some things in there you might recognize. Well, I'm going to turn it around, and from that you will know the brand. And you, in fact, I haven't even taken this. This says lot 114. This was the auction lot number. They often the auction houses have to keep up with their stuff, and I don't know what was stuck on here, but if you will take this off, and got some dust on it, that's okay. Now, any of you who have this specific machine, you might already know which one it is. Not just because you can now see on the front, it says Singer. So if you hadn't figured out the brand, you have now. So it actually shows Singer right there. And again, this is early 1960s, right? So how long was the Slant-O-Matic in production, the 500 series? Singer had a habit of keeping machines in production, so it's always kind of tricky to figure out, even if you know the year or approximate part of the decade when a machine was in production with Singer, it could be one of their older models. So, what do you think? Any ideas? Any guesses? Keep in mind, those of you who've been watching my channel for some time, you probably have figured out that I've covered quite a few Singers, but I've never covered this one. I'm actually going to turn it back around when I open the top, and we'll see if you can spot this machine and what model it is, cobwebs and all. Well, for those of you who know Singers from this era, this probably is going to give it away. This, of course, is the spool pin, the thread holder. Anyone else? It's white, right? And I don't remember many Singers being white earlier than the 60s, except for the featherweight that they had a white version of. So, there it is, guys. That is the very first Singer. Well, it is a Slant-O-Matic, but you all know that's not my first Slant-O-Matic. It says Singer Touch and Sew. And it literally is the first time I've ever had a touch and sew. Ever worked on one, ever shown one here on the channel. And I'm curious to what all of you think. There's a lot of people in the vintage sewing world who have sometimes quite a lot to say about the touch and sews, and they have their own reasons for it. Now, one of the things that's really important, and some of you may already be asking this question, and it is this: what model number is it? It is model 600E, like Edward. Okay, so the attachments that I was showing you earlier in this box, of course, the box, I didn't show you the cover of the box, or it would have given away the model. The box itself, of course, says Model 600. Now, the reason they call these 600 is because this was the series of machines that Singer brought out after the 500 series. This was the next new and improved, quote unquote, series that Singer had, and that was it's a natural progression. You had the Singer 301, the first Slant-O-Matic, the that wonderful and amazing dedicated straight stitcher, and then you had the 400 series, the 401A, the 403, the 404, and then of course the 500 series. Again, people commonly refer to it today as the Rocketeer. So the 600 was the next series. And you might be thinking, well, why did I go to the trouble of going onto an auction, seeing this machine, and purchasing it? And those of you who know the Slant-O-Matic series know that, well, the Slant-O-Matic series is one of those things that people either love them or they do not. And one of the reasons for that has to do, I don't know what's going on with this, but there's actually quite a lot of dust on top of this, and I'm not sure why. There are reasons why people love these machines and why they do not. Now, this is what I believe, and please leave your comments there. You may disagree with me. Some of the touch and sew Singers have features that I consider to be very innovative. In fact, the touch and sew, I would argue, I'm going to kind of go out on a limb here and say this, it is an example of the very last truly just incredible innovations in engineering that Singer created. Singer doesn't always get a lot of love for being the first to do something. In fact, they were a fairly conservative company. They were famously slow to bring in free arm sewing machines, even though European companies had them in Europe for quite a long time. And even Singer had some free arm machines in their 400 series. They were made in Germany and sold in Europe, and you could get them in the US, but they're far and few between. So I'm going to talk later in future videos about what made the Singer Touch and Sew so innovative. Okay, why was it such an innovation? That's the good side. That's the good part. And why do some people not like them? What's wrong with the Touch and Sew? So remember, this series, the 600E, is one of the early series of Touch and Sews. And of course, if you're not familiar with this particular model series or the name Touch and Sew, it gets that name because that's where the innovation is. So for those of you who know these machines, this is just an introduction to what I believe is going to be a series of videos on this machine, because this machine represents one of the, to my mind, as a machine nerd, one of the greatest innovations ever created in sewing machines. However, there's a dark side to the Touch and Sew, and that is it is also one of the first machines that eventually Singer would begin to they eventually got rid of their great quality because of the change from steel to plastic. Now, I'll be doing a more thorough investigation into the machine. We're going to disassemble parts of it to kind of look at it. And remember that the Singer Touch and Sew, its early models, had some things that were great and not so great. And then eventually, as the Touch and Sew series, they would come out with, it would be 600, and they would introduce different model numbers and letters on the Touch and Sew series. And those machines would also show their own compromises. So again, I'm introducing this machine because it is kind of a lightning rod with people who love vintage machines, because they say, oh, I wouldn't have a Touch and Sew. Why wouldn't you have a Touch and Sew? Right? So it's like many things in life. It's sort of ironic. It's like a contradiction. How could one of the greatest innovations in sewing machines by arguably one of the greatest sewing machine makers ever in history, how could it have such an incredible innovation while at the same time being what I consider the swan song This is, you are looking at, and I know that there are other models. There's a 300 series of machines. I think I have that right. Maybe my 200 series. There were other Singer sewing machines built around this time. In fact, they were built, I think, as late as maybe the late 60s, where Singer had some of their designs that were still being made with good quality, with good steel construction, but their designs had come out maybe a little earlier than this machine. And in any case, those machines are not necessarily innovative. They're well made, right? And they were still in production. But in the early 1960s, 1963-ish, the Slant-O-Matic, the 600 touch and sew, makes its debut. And it is, I think it's kind of appropriate that this particular one, they came in different colors. This one is actually in white, and I think that's appropriate because to me, this is the swan song. This is the last of the great Singer sewing machines. If you think I've totally lost my mind and don't know why would I ever buy this, if you think it was a terrible idea, put your comments down there. It's okay, because this is, unlike many of the machines I cover, all of my viewers have feelings, sometimes very strongly or negatively, about certain brands and models. But of all the machines I've ever come across, the touch and sew is one of the more controversial. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this early touch and sew is one of the last and one of the greatest in terms of innovation, in terms of engineering, trying to improve on a sewing machine's features. It's one of the last, right? It's the swan song, if you will, the last of the great innovations from Singer, at least, and one of the last heirloom quality machines ever made. It is, and I say last because this series would change. You would have additional 600 models, and as those machines came out, Singer's quality would continue to change, and not in a good way. So many of you have heard of this machine, and you may have been told, oh, don't get one of those. But I would say not so fast, because I understand some of the criticism for the Touch and Sew series, but I really want to delve into it because Singer, being one of the, arguably they were the largest manufacturers of sewing machines in the world for most of sewing machine history, not today. But in the early 1960s, in terms of new model, new technology, new introductions, I believe this is the last great Singer before the Singer Sewing Machine Company would eventually, like all the other manufacturers, not picking on Singer, all of the companies with domestic sewing machines, you all know what happened. We get into the beyond in late 70s, early 80s. I've shown all of you some of even the Japanese machines, even though they had lower costs of production, the Japanese manufacturers were also switching over to some steel mechanicals and some plastic. And we'll talk in some of the next videos coming up on this machine. I'll talk about when does it matter that you have metal and when does it not matter as much. So there you go, everyone. I don't make videos very often that I think are particularly lightning rod, but this I think is one of them because I've had people just talking to me about sewing machines saying, "Oh no, I don't want one of these." And some of you may have these and love them. So I'm really looking forward. I just wanted to make this video to say this is a big deal. This is for many reasons. First, for me, because I've never had one. I've never worked on one. But we're going to go into it. We're going to talk about the Touch and Sew, what I think was so incredible about it, and why this Touch and Sew might be okay, but not all of them. So there are Touch and Sews, and then there are Touch and Sews. And it is a big deal because the largest, arguably one of the greatest makers of sewing machines in history, this was their last great hurrah, at least from my perspective as a sewing machine restorer. If you've had Singers that were made after this and you thought they were awesome, put them down in the comments. There's an old saying, if everyone is agreeing, no one is thinking. And I think that's true. So it's okay. Good minds can disagree. That's how we learn. But this machine, I mean, really excited because, as all of you know, I have so many machines that I restore over and over again because A, they're awesome, and B, they're plentiful. But when I find a machine that I'm covering for the first time, I like being able to explore, and I like taking all of you with me because maybe you've got one of these and it's your first time too, and we can learn the new machine, or at least new to us, together. So there you go. The Touch and Sew by Singer Model 600E. We're going to find out what it's made of, literally what it's made of, and what might have been awesome about it, and what were some of its problems. So thank you all for watching. Please feel free to subscribe, and you can donate to the channel via Buy Me a Coffee. The links are all over this channel. And I so appreciate you all watching, and stay tuned because there's more to come on the Swan song for the Singer Sewing Machine Company. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.